Regina Fleming's perfectly manicured fingernails tapped nervously against her laptop as she waited for the video call to connect. The familiar chime finally rang out, and her husband's face appeared on screen. The 3-hour time difference between Chicago and San Francisco meant it was already past 10 o'clock at night back home. Something felt off immediately. Marvin's smile seemed strained, his eyes darting around the room instead of focusing on her. "Hey, how's the conference going?" he asked, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. The same hair she'd fallen in love with 15 years ago when they'd met at a charity gala. "Exhausting," Regina replied, tucking a strand of her chestnut hair behind her ear. "The presentation went well, but these networking events are draining the life out of me. Everyone wants to talk about quarterly projections over cocktails, and I just want to kick off these heels and sleep." Regina shifted her laptop slightly, trying to get more comfortable in the hotel chair. Something on the screen caught her attention. A flash of color at the edge of the frame on Marvin's side of the call. She squinted slightly. "Have you been eating properly? I know how you forget when I'm not there," she said, carefully adjusting her screen angle to see more of their bedroom. Marvin laughed. "I ordered pizza tonight. Don't worry about me." There it was again, that nervous quality to his voice. And now Regina could clearly see what had caught her eye. A pair of women's sandals, lime green with decorative stones, sitting by her side of the bed. Sandals that definitely didn't belong to her. Her heart seemed to stop, then hammered painfully against her ribs. But 15 years in corporate America had taught Regina how to maintain her composure under pressure. She kept her expression neutral as bile rose in her throat. "Did you remember to water my orchids?" she asked, her voice remarkably steady. "Of course. Everything's fine here." Marvin glanced at his watch. "Listen, I have an early meeting tomorrow. I should probably get some sleep." "Sure," Regina said, fighting to keep her voice from cracking. "I'll call you tomorrow night." "Love you," Marvin said, already reaching for the disconnect button. "You too." The words tasted like ash in her mouth. The moment the call ended, Regina's facade crumbled. She slammed her laptop closed and pressed her hands against her face, breathing hard through her fingers. The sandals, the nervousness, the quick goodbye. It all painted a clear, devastating picture. Regina spent the remainder of her business trip in a daze. She delivered her final presentation on autopilot, smiled mechanically through client meetings, and packed her suitcase with robotic efficiency. The only thought in her head, those green sandals on her bedroom floor. 3 days later, Regina's key turned in the lock of their elegant townhouse. She'd told Marvin her flight would arrive in the evening, but she'd deliberately booked an earlier one. The house was empty when she arrived. Marvin was at work, or so he'd texted. Regina dropped her luggage in the foyer and went straight to their bedroom. She searched the room methodically, checking under the bed, in the closets, behind furniture. There was no sign of the green sandals. She checked the guest bathroom, but it was pristine, with no evidence anyone had used it recently. The digital clock on her nightstand read 2:33 in the afternoon. Plenty of time before Marvin would be home. Regina sat on the edge of the bed and reached for his phone charger on the nightstand. Empty, which meant he had his phone with him. Of course he did. She walked to his home office and sat at his desk. His laptop was password protected, but after 15 years of marriage, Regina knew all his passwords. It was a combination of his mother's maiden name and the year they got married. The laptop came to life, revealing dozens of open browser tabs. Regina closed them one by one until she noticed a tab for a messenger application. Marvin rarely used messaging apps. He preferred calling or texting. Her finger hovered over the mouse button, her stomach knotting with apprehension. She clicked. The app opened to reveal a conversation with someone named Sammy. The profile picture showed a young woman with platinum blonde hair and a pouty smile. Regina scrolled up through the messages, each one a knife to her heart. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again. I miss the taste of your skin. When is she leaving town next?" Regina's hands began to shake. She took out her phone and methodically photographed the screen, capturing message after message, each one more damning than the last. One exchange stood out. "I love our adventures together," Samantha had written. "You're the most exciting thing in my life," Marvin had replied. Adventures. The word burned itself into Regina's brain. She closed the laptop exactly as she had found it and returned to the living room, sinking onto the sofa. Her entire body felt numb except for a cold, hard knot forming in her chest. Regina picked up her phone and texted her best friend, "Diana, I need to see you. It's urgent." Then she went to the kitchen, opened a bottle of wine, and waited for her world to stop spinning. Diana Hammond arrived 45 minutes later, her Lexus pulling into the driveway with a spray of gravel. Regina watched through the window as her friend hurried up the front walk. Diana had been her rock since college, the one constant in Regina's life, even as career changes and relocations had pulled them in different directions. "What's wrong?" Diana asked the moment Regina opened the door. "You look awful." Regina led her to the living room, where she had lined up her phone with the screenshots next to the half-empty wine bottle. "Marvin's having an affair," she said flatly, her voice devoid of emotion. Diana's blue eyes widened as she scrolled through the images. "That bastard," she whispered. "Are you sure?" Regina explained about the video call, the green sandals, everything. As she spoke, the shock that had insulated her began to crack, and tears finally came, hot and bitter. "I gave him everything," Regina choked out. 15 years of my life. I supported him when his first business failed. I moved across the country when he got that job offer in Chicago. And this is how he repays me." Diana wrapped her in a fierce hug. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." Regina wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "Part of me wants to confront him right now. Throw him out. Burn all his clothes on the lawn." "And the other part?" Diana asked quietly. Regina's eyes hardened. "The other part wants him to hurt like I'm hurting, to feel as betrayed and humiliated as I do right now." Diana was silent for a long moment, her gaze distant. Then she squeezed Regina's hand. "What if I told you I might have an idea? Something that would teach him a lesson he'd never forget?" "What are you talking about?" Diana hesitated. "You know how William and I own several businesses, right?" Regina nodded. Diana's husband was a famously successful entrepreneur with interests in everything from real estate to technology startups. "Well, one of our smaller ventures is an extreme sports company. Skydiving, specifically." Regina stared at her friend, confusion momentarily displacing her anger. "What does that have to do with anything?" A slow, dangerous smile spread across Diana's face. "Remember that message? About how they love their adventures? What if we gave them the adventure of a lifetime?" As Diana outlined her plan, Regina felt something shift inside her. The cold knot of betrayal began to transform into something else, a burning desire for justice, or perhaps revenge. "You're insane," Regina said, when Diana finished explaining. We could get in trouble." "No one gets hurt," Diana insisted. "Not physically, anyway. And they'll never be able to prove anything. Think about it. Every time he looks at her, every time they talk about adventures, they'll remember waking up falling from the sky." Regina pictured Marvin's face contorted with fear. She imagined Samantha's screams as they plummeted through the air. It was wrong, of course. Extreme. Perhaps even cruel. But when she thought about those green sandals beside her bed, in her home, in her sanctuary, Regina found she didn't care. "Okay," she said quietly. "Let's do it." Diana's eyes gleamed with excitement. "I'll make all the arrangements. You just need to make sure they're both here and incapacitated." "How am I supposed to do that?" Regina asked. Diana's expression turned serious. "I can get you something. A prescription sedative, strong enough to knock them out completely, but safe if used correctly." Regina raised an eyebrow. "And how exactly will you get that?" "William's other holdings include a private medical clinic." Diana waved her hand dismissively. "Leave that part to me." As Diana left with promises to put everything in motion, Regina stood alone in the living room, swirling the remaining wine in her glass. The plan was outrageous, possibly illegal, and definitely beyond the bounds of reasonable revenge. Yet, as she imagined Marvin and his young mistress waking up thousands of feet in the air, she felt something she hadn't experienced since seeing those green sandals. A sense of power. Regina finished her wine and began to plan her next business trip. 2 weeks passed in a blur of detailed planning. Regina arranged for another business trip to San Francisco, making sure to mention it repeatedly to Marvin. She noticed how his eyes lit up when she told him she'd be gone for 3 days, Friday through Sunday. His poorly concealed eagerness made her stomach turn. "I'll miss you," he said, kissing her cheek as she packed her suitcase on Thursday evening. "I'm sure you'll find ways to keep yourself occupied," she replied, her voice honey-sweet with hidden venom. Marvin didn't notice the edge in her words. The next morning, Regina kissed Marvin goodbye and wheeled her suitcase to her car with theatrical flair. She drove away from their home, but went only as far as Diana's sprawling lakeside mansion on the outskirts of the city. There, she would wait, while setting their plan into motion. "Are you nervous?" Diana asked, pouring coffee in her sunlit kitchen. The view of Lake Michigan stretched out before them, the water glittering in the morning light. Regina's hands trembled slightly as she reached for her cup. "I'd be lying if I said no, but every time I start to reconsider, I remember those messages. And those damn green sandals." Diana slid a small bottle across the marble countertop. 2 drops in each glass of wine. It takes about 20 minutes to kick in. They'll be out for at least 3 hours. Regina stared at the innocuous-looking bottle. "And you're sure it's safe?" "Absolutely," Diana confirmed. "It's the same medication they use for certain medical procedures. They'll feel groggy afterward, maybe a mild headache, but nothing dangerous." Regina slipped the bottle into her purse. "And the skydiving part?" "All arranged," Diana said with a satisfied smile. "The instructors have been briefed. They're 2 of our most experienced guys. They think they're helping with an extreme bachelor party stunt. They've been told our clients want the ultimate thrill of waking up during a tandem jump." Regina nodded, trying to quiet the voice of doubt in her mind. "What about afterward? Won't Marvin and Samantha realize what happened?" Diana's smile turned mischievous. "That's the beauty of it. They'll be so disoriented, they'll have no idea how they got there. The instructors will stick to the story that they signed up for an extreme experience. Who would believe their claims about being drugged and kidnapped? They'd sound insane. And if they somehow trace it back to us?" Diana waved her hand dismissively. "They won't. The instructors don't know me. They were hired through managers, and the payment was made through a series of corporate accounts. It's untraceable." Regina took a deep breath. "Okay then, let's do this." At precisely 11 o'clock that morning, Regina called Marvin. "Hey, just checking in. My flight landed safely." "That's great," Marvin said, his voice casual but with an undercurrent of impatience. "How's the weather there?" "Sunny and beautiful," Regina lied, looking out at the cloudy Chicago sky from Diana's kitchen. "I have meetings all day, but I'll try to call tonight." "Don't worry if you can't," Marvin replied quickly. "I might go out with some colleagues tonight anyway." "Colleagues. Right." Regina fought to keep her voice steady. "Have fun. I love you." "Love you too," he said, already sounding distracted. Regina ended the call and looked at Diana. "Now, we wait." They didn't have to wait long. At 11:30, Regina checked the app she'd secretly installed on Marvin's phone. The GPS showed him leaving their house. By 12:15, the location icon showed him stopping at a small cafe downtown, one of his and Samantha's regular meeting spots, according to their messages. "He's picking her up," Regina said, her voice tight with anger. By 1 o'clock, Marvin's phone was back at their townhouse. Regina pictured them together in her home, in her bed, and felt sick with rage. "It's time," Diana said, placing a comforting hand on Regina's shoulder. They drove separately, Diana in her Lexus, Regina in her own car. They parked a block away from the townhouse and approached on foot. Regina used her key to open the front door as quietly as possible. The house was silent, except for faint music coming from upstairs. On the kitchen counter stood an open bottle of red wine and 2 half-empty glasses. Perfect. Regina gestured for Diana to stay in the living room while she crept upstairs. The bedroom door was closed, but she could hear muffled conversation and laughter on the other side. Fighting back tears of humiliation, she returned downstairs. "They're upstairs," she whispered to Diana. "We need to wait for them to come down for more wine." They didn't have to wait long. About 15 minutes later, footsteps sounded on the stairs. Regina and Diana hid in the guest bathroom, listening as Marvin's voice drifted from the kitchen. "Another glass?" he asked. "Definitely," a female voice replied, young, slightly husky. "Samantha." Hearing the other woman's voice made Regina's resolve harden like steel. They waited until the footsteps retreated upstairs, then slipped into the kitchen. Regina took out the bottle from her purse with shaking hands and carefully added 4 drops to the wine bottle, swirling it gently as Diana had instructed. "Now we wait," she whispered. They returned to Diana's car and monitored the house from a distance. Diana had brought high-powered binoculars from her husband's collection of sporting equipment. 20 minutes until it takes effect," Diana said, checking her watch. The time passed with excruciating slowness. At the 25-minute mark, Regina couldn't stand the waiting anymore. "I need to check," she insisted. They approached the house cautiously. Regina used her key again and entered silently. The music upstairs had stopped. She ascended the stairs with Diana close behind, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure it would give them away. The bedroom door was ajar now. Regina pushed it open slowly to reveal Marvin and Samantha sprawled across the bed, fully clothed but completely unconscious. The wine glasses sat empty on the nightstand. "It worked," Regina breathed, a mixture of relief and disbelief washing over her. Diana stepped forward and checked both their pulses. "They're fine, just deeply asleep." Now comes the tricky part. Diana sent a text message, and within 10 minutes, a nondescript van pulled up outside. 2 men in casual clothes entered the house, employees from Diana's skydiving company who believed they were helping with an elaborate surprise for wealthy thrill-seekers. With professional efficiency, they carried the unconscious Marvin and Samantha to the van. Regina watched as they secured them carefully in the seats, ensuring they wouldn't be injured during transport. "See you at the airfield," one of the men said to Diana, who nodded in response. Regina stood in her driveway, watching the van drive away with her husband and his mistress. A part of her wondered if she had lost her mind. The rest of her felt a grim satisfaction. "Are you okay?" Diana asked, touching her arm gently. Regina nodded. "Let's finish this." They drove to a small private airfield about an hour outside the city. By the time they arrived, the technicians had already dressed Marvin and Samantha in skydiving gear. They lay on padded mats in a preparation room, still deeply unconscious, but breathing normally. "How much longer until they wake up?" Regina asked, looking down at Marvin's peaceful face. How dare he look so serene when he had shattered her world? "The medication should wear off in about an hour," Diana replied. "Perfect timing for the jump. The plane takes 30 minutes to reach altitude." Regina noticed the green sandals on Samantha's feet, the same ones she'd seen beside her bed during that fateful video call. Samantha was younger than Regina had expected, probably in her late 20s, with long platinum blonde hair and a perfect figure. "Of course. The jump instructors are ready," Diana said, checking her phone. "They'll be harnessed to Marvin and Samantha for the tandem jump. Completely safe. They do this with nervous first-timers all the time." Regina looked around the preparation room, taking in the professional equipment and the experienced staff. "And they really believe Marvin and Samantha wanted this?" Diana nodded. "Rich people pay for all kinds of extreme experiences. The instructors were told this couple wanted the ultimate adrenaline rush, to wake up already falling through the sky. They signed hefty waivers, of course." She smiled slyly. Or, rather, someone signed for them. Regina knew she should feel guilty about what they were about to do. It was extreme, potentially traumatizing, and definitely crossed ethical lines. But when she looked at Samantha's youthful face and remembered her pouty smile in the profile picture, her remorse evaporated. "When do they board the plane?" she asked. "Now," Diana replied. "We'll monitor everything from here." She pointed to a bank of screens showing feeds from cameras mounted on the instructors' helmets. "We'll see exactly what they see, including Marvin and Samantha's faces when they wake up." Regina watched as the unconscious pair were carefully carried to the waiting aircraft. The instructors, professionals to the core, treated them with the utmost care, securing them properly to their own harnesses. 20-minute flight to altitude, Diana said, as the small plane taxied down the runway. Then the real show begins. They sat in Diana's car near the landing zone, watching the live feed on a tablet. The small aircraft climbed steadily through clear blue skies. Regina could see her husband's head lolling against the shoulder of his jump instructor. Samantha was similarly positioned with her instructor. Both were still unconscious, but Regina noticed Marvin's fingers twitching slightly. "They're starting to wake up," she said, her mouth dry. On screen, the jump door opened. Cold air rushed into the cabin. The instructors moved into position with their still groggy partners secured tightly to their fronts. "3, 2, 1, jump!" shouted the jump master. The instructors leaped from the plane in perfect form, their human cargo still only semi-conscious. The camera showed the ground far below as they entered free fall. The rushing air seemed to accelerate the waking process. On screen, Regina watched Marvin's eyes flutter open. For a moment, there was just confusion on his face, then pure, unadulterated terror as he realized he was plummeting through the sky. "What the hell?" His scream was picked up by the instructor's microphone, thin and reedy in the rushing wind. Beside him, Samantha was also awake now, her mouth open in a silent scream of shock before finding her voice. "Marvin, what's happening?" Regina watched, transfixed, as panic consumed them both. Marvin thrashed against his harness, while his instructor calmly reassured him. Samantha had progressed from screaming to sobbing, her makeup streaking down her face in the high-velocity wind. "Oh my God," Regina whispered, torn between horror and satisfaction. "They really have no idea what's happening." Diana laughed beside her, the sound sharp with vindication. "Didn't they want adventures? Well, here's one they'll never forget." On screen, the instructors deployed their parachutes. The sudden jerk as their descent slowed caused both Marvin and Samantha to scream again. As they drifted more gently toward the ground, Regina could hear the instructor's practiced patter. "Relax, sir. Everything is under control. You specifically requested the wake-up skydive experience. Best adrenaline rush money can buy." "I didn't request anything!" Marvin shouted, his voice cracking with fear. "I was at home. I was drinking wine." "Sir, you both came in this morning," the instructor replied calmly. "You said you wanted to be sedated for the flight up because you were nervous, but wanted to wake up during the jump for maximum impact. You signed all the waivers. This is insane." Samantha was crying now, mascara streaking her face. "I want to go home." "Almost there, ma'am," her instructor said soothingly. "Just enjoy the view. Most people pay thousands for this experience." Regina watched as the parachutes guided them safely to the landing zone. The moment they touched down, Marvin collapsed onto the grass, his legs apparently unable to support him. Samantha wasn't doing much better, sinking to her knees as soon as her instructor unhooked her. "What happens now?" Regina asked, unable to tear her eyes away from the tableau of her husband and his mistress, disheveled and disoriented on the grassy field. Diana smiled. "Now they try to make sense of what just happened. And we enjoy the show." Regina and Diana remained in the car, watching the aftermath unfold through binoculars and the tablet's live feed. The instructors had removed their helmet cameras, but Diana's position at the skydiving company had ensured discreetly placed cameras around the landing zone. Marvin struggled to his feet, his face ashen. His normally immaculate appearance was in shambles. Hair wind-blown, clothes rumpled from the harness. Samantha looked even worse. Her platinum blonde hair had transformed into a wild tangle, and her carefully applied makeup had been reduced to dark smudges under her eyes. "This is completely unacceptable," Marvin was shouting at the lead instructor, who maintained a practiced, professional calm. "We were drugged, kidnapped. This is assault." "Sir," the instructor replied with patient confusion, "you both arrived at our facility this morning. You specifically requested our extreme wake-up experience. You said, and I quote, 'Even if we seem to change our minds or get cold feet, go through with it. We want the ultimate thrill.'" "That's insane." "I would never say that." Marvin's voice had risen to a near-hysterical pitch. "I was at home with—" He stopped abruptly, glancing at Samantha, suddenly aware of the implications of finishing that sentence in front of the staff. Regina couldn't help but smile at his predicament. He couldn't even properly protest without admitting to his infidelity. Samantha had recovered enough to join the argument, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and indignation. "I don't even like heights. I would never agree to this. Whatever this is." "Ma'am," another staff member interjected, holding a clipboard, "we have signed waivers from both of you. Standard procedure. We wouldn't have proceeded otherwise." "Let me see those." Marvin snatched the clipboard. Regina held her breath as he scrutinized the documents. Diana had assured her the forgeries would hold up under casual inspection. The signatures looked genuine enough that only a forensic expert would spot the difference. Marvin's expression shifted from anger to confusion. This looks like my signature, but I didn't sign this. I couldn't have." "And there's mine," Samantha said in disbelief, pointing at the paper. "But I don't understand. I was at Marvin's house. We were having wine." The instructors exchanged knowing glances, the kind reserved for difficult clients who regretted their impulse purchases. "Many of our clients experience a form of temporary amnesia due to the extreme adrenaline and unusual awakening," the lead instructor explained patiently. "It's actually quite common with the wake-up experience. Your memories should fully return within 24 hours. "This is ridiculous," Marvin exploded. "I'm calling the police." He patted his pockets, then looked around frantically. "Where's my phone? My wallet?" "All personal items are secured in lockers before jumps, sir," the staff member with the clipboard explained. "Safety protocol. They'll be returned to you before you leave." Marvin ran his hands through his disheveled hair. "I need to make a call. Now." "Of course," the instructor said. "You can use our office phone." As Marvin stalked toward the small office building, Samantha remained on the field, hugging herself and looking utterly lost. Regina felt an unexpected pang of sympathy for the young woman before hardening her heart again. Samantha had made her choices. "Who do you think he's going to call?" Diana whispered, still watching through the binoculars. "Me," Regina said with certainty. "He'll try to reach me first to check if I'm really in San Francisco." Sure enough, a few minutes later, Regina's phone lit up with an incoming call from an unknown number. She let it ring through to voicemail, imagining Marvin's growing panic as he failed to reach her. "What next?" Diana asked, setting down the binoculars. "We head back to your place and wait," Regina replied. "When he finally makes it home, I'll already be there, having returned early from my trip because I missed him." Diana's smile was pure mischief. Perfect. They drove back to Diana's lakeside mansion, the hour-long journey passing quickly as they dissected every moment of Marvin and Samantha's skyward awakening. Regina found herself laughing, actually laughing, for the first time since discovering the affair. "Did you see his face when they jumped?" she asked, wiping tears of mirth from her eyes. "I've never seen him look so terrified." "And Samantha screaming his name," Diana added, mimicking the high-pitched wail. Priceless. As the afternoon stretched into evening, Regina monitored Marvin's progress through the tracking app. After leaving the skydiving facility, his location showed him moving erratically, first to a coffee shop, then to what appeared to be Samantha's apartment building in the city, and finally around 8:30 in the evening, heading toward their townhouse. "He's on his way home," Regina announced, showing Diana the screen. "Time for me to go." "Are you ready?" Diana asked, her expression growing serious. "This won't be easy." Regina nodded, her momentary levity replaced by cold determination. "I've been rehearsing this confrontation in my head for 2 weeks. I'm more than ready." She gathered her things and hugged Diana tightly. "Thank you for everything. Call me tomorrow," Diana instructed. "I want every detail." Regina arrived at the townhouse 15 minutes before Marvin, quickly unpacking her suitcase and arranging evidence of her early return from San Francisco. She placed her carry-on by the door and left her jacket draped over a chair, as though she'd just arrived. Then she sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, waiting. The sound of Marvin's key in the lock sent a surge of adrenaline through her body. Regina straightened her spine and composed her features into an expression of casual welcome. Marvin stumbled into the kitchen, freezing when he saw her. He looked terrible, exhausted, rumpled, and still bearing the lingering shock of his unexpected skydiving adventure. For a split second, confusion and panic flashed across his face before he recovered. "Regina?" he managed, his voice cracking slightly. "You're home early." "I caught an earlier flight," she explained, rising to kiss his cheek as though nothing were amiss. "My last meeting got cancelled, and I missed you." "Surprise!" Marvin accepted her kiss stiffly, his body tense. "That's wonderful. Are you okay?" Regina asked, injecting concerned innocence into her voice. "You look awful." Marvin ran a hand through his still disheveled hair. I had a strange day." "What happened?" Regina guided him to a chair, playing the role of concerned wife perfectly. Marvin hesitated, visibly struggling with how to explain his day without incriminating himself. I went out for a drive and it's going to sound crazy, but I think I might have been drugged." "Drugged?" Regina widened her eyes in manufactured shock. "What do you mean? Should we go to the hospital?" No, Marvin said quickly. "I'm fine now. It's just, I have these bizarre fragments of memory. I think I might have been skydiving." Regina let her jaw drop. "Skydiving? You? But you're terrified of heights." "I know," Marvin agreed, looking relieved that she understood the impossibility of the situation. "That's why it doesn't make any sense. I would never voluntarily jump out of a plane." "Maybe you dreamed it?" Regina suggested. "Or maybe you watched a skydiving video that seemed real?" Marvin shook his head. "It felt real. Too real." He hesitated, then added, "And I wasn't alone." Regina felt a cold satisfaction as he walked straight into her trap. "Not alone? Who were you with in this vision?" Again, Marvin hesitated. "I'm not sure. It's all jumbled." "Maybe you should lie down," Regina suggested, standing to prepare a glass of water for him. "You do look exhausted." As she turned to the sink, she allowed herself a small, private smile. Marvin was floundering, caught between the impossible reality of his afternoon and his need to hide his affair. "Did anything interesting happen while I was away?" she asked casually, handing him the water. Marvin nearly choked. "No, nothing at all. Just work." Regina nodded, letting silence fill the kitchen. The weight of unspoken truths hung between them like a physical presence. Finally, she spoke again. "That's odd. I could have sworn I saw a wine bottle and glasses on the counter when I got home. Did you have company?" The blood drained from Marvin's face. "I had a glass of wine last night. Must have forgotten to clean up." Regina allowed her expression to sharpen slightly. "2 glasses, Marvin? I saw 2 glasses. Maybe from the night before," he mumbled, not meeting her eyes. Regina let her skepticism show. "Well, I'm going to unpack. Will you be coming up soon?" Marvin nodded mutely, still clearly disoriented from his day. Regina climbed the stairs, her heart pounding with anticipation. The final act was about to begin. In their bedroom, she quickly checked that everything was in place. The evidence she had gathered over the past weeks was arranged precisely where she needed it. She heard Marvin's heavy footsteps on the stairs a few minutes later. When he entered the bedroom, Regina was sitting calmly on the edge of the bed, looking through her phone. "Feeling any better?" she asked. "Not really," Marvin admitted, sitting beside her with a weary sigh. "I feel like I'm losing my mind." Regina nodded sympathetically. "Maybe you're just overworked. You should take some time off." "Maybe," he agreed, rubbing his temples. "By the way," Regina said, keeping her tone light, "have you seen my blue earrings, the ones you gave me for our anniversary?" Marvin frowned. "Aren't they in your jewelry box?" "I thought so, but I can't find them. I was hoping to wear them to dinner tomorrow night." "I haven't seen them," Marvin said, his frown deepening. "When did you last wear them?" "Before my trip," Regina replied. She stood and walked to the dresser, opening the top drawer. "That's strange." "What?" Marvin asked. "Some of my things seem moved." Regina turned to face him, letting a hint of suspicion enter her voice. "Did you reorganize while I was gone?" "No," Marvin said quickly. Too quickly. Regina pulled out her phone and appeared to check something. "Marvin, where were you at around 1 o'clock this afternoon?" The question caught him off guard. "I was out, running errands." "Why?" "Because," Regina said slowly, "I got an alert from our security system. Someone accessed the house at 1:15. This was a lie. They had no such security system, but Marvin wouldn't know that. "Maybe a glitch," he suggested weakly. "Maybe." Regina let the word hang in the air, heavy with implication. Then she softened her tone. "Well, I'm exhausted from the flight. I'm going to take a shower before bed." She gathered her nightclothes and headed for the bathroom, leaving Marvin stewing in his mounting anxiety. As she closed the door, she glimpsed him checking his phone frantically, no doubt trying to reach Samantha to coordinate their stories. Regina let hot water cascade over her body, washing away the tension of the day. The plan had worked perfectly, better than she could have hoped. Marvin was unraveling, trapped in a web of impossibilities and lies. Tomorrow, she would spring the final trap. After her shower, Regina emerged to find Marvin already in bed, pretending to be asleep. His breathing was too rapid, his body too tense. She slipped beneath the covers on her side of the bed, maintaining a careful distance between them. "Good night," he said softly. Marvin mumbled an incoherent response. Regina stared up at the ceiling, listening to Marvin's restless movements beside her. She imagined him reliving the terror of waking up in free fall, trying to make sense of an experience that defied explanation. She imagined Samantha alone in her apartment, equally confused and frightened. For the first time in weeks, Regina fell asleep with a sense of justice being served. Morning arrived with soft golden light filtering through the bedroom curtains. Regina woke first, sliding quietly out of bed to prepare coffee downstairs. Today was the day she would end her marriage on her own terms. She heard Marvin's phone chime with a message while he was still asleep. Unable to resist, Regina checked it. The message was from Samantha. "We need to talk. I can't stop thinking about what happened. Call me the minute you're alone." Perfect. Regina deleted the message and returned the phone to the nightstand. Let him worry when Samantha accused him of ignoring her. By the time Marvin dragged himself downstairs, Regina had prepared a full breakfast, his favorite blueberry pancakes. A final meal for a condemned man. "You didn't have to do this," he said, looking both grateful and confused by her kindness. "I wanted to," Regina replied with a gentle smile. "You still seem upset about yesterday. I thought comfort food might help." Marvin picked at his pancakes, clearly distracted. "Regina, about yesterday." "Yes?" she prompted when he faltered. "Nothing," he said after a pause. "Just thank you for breakfast." They ate in silence, the weight of unspoken truths growing heavier with each passing minute. Regina wondered if he would ever find the courage to confess, to explain the inexplicable events of the previous day. But she knew he wouldn't. His cowardice was as familiar to her now as his smile had once been. After breakfast, Marvin announced he needed to go to the office to catch up on work. A transparent excuse to contact Samantha, Regina knew. She nodded agreeably. "Actually," she said, as he headed for the door, "before you go, could we talk for a minute?" Marvin froze, his hand on the doorknob. "Can it wait until tonight? I'm running late." "It's important," Regina insisted, her voice firm but calm. Reluctantly, Marvin returned to the kitchen. Regina gestured for him to sit across from her at the table. She took a deep breath, preparing for the confrontation she had rehearsed countless times in her mind. "Marvin," she began, her voice steady despite the thundering of her heart, "I know about Samantha." The color drained from Marvin's face. His mouth opened and closed several times before he managed to speak. "Samantha, I don't know what you're talking about." Regina maintained her composure, a skill honed through years of high-stakes business negotiations. She reached into the drawer beside her and placed her phone on the table, screen facing Marvin. With deliberate slowness, she scrolled through the screenshots of his conversations with Samantha. "I love our adventures together," she read aloud, her voice cool and detached. "You're the most exciting thing in my life." Marvin's expression crumpled like wet paper. "Regina, I can explain." "Don't." She held up her hand, silencing him. "There's nothing to explain. The messages are quite clear. It was a mistake," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "It didn't mean anything." Regina laughed, a sharp sound devoid of humor. "A mistake? Bringing another woman into our home, into our bed, while I was away? That's not a mistake, Marvin. That's a choice. A series of choices, made over and over again." Marvin's eyes widened. "How did you—" "I saw her sandals during our video call," Regina explained, watching realization dawn on his face. "Those ridiculous green ones with the stones. She left them by my side of the bed." "Oh, God," Marvin whispered, burying his face in his hands. "But that's not even the worst part," Regina continued, her voice growing harder. "The worst part is that you've been lying to my face for weeks. Months, maybe? How long has it been going on, Marvin?" When he didn't respond, Regina pushed her chair back and stood. The movement startled him, his head jerking up to watch her. 3 months, he admitted, his voice barely audible. "But, Regina, please, I made a terrible mistake. I'll end it. We can work through this. Go to counseling." Regina shook her head, feeling oddly calm now that the confrontation was finally happening. "No, Marvin, we can't, because I don't want to. You broke something that can't be fixed." Desperation flashed across his face. "You can't just throw away 15 years of marriage over one mistake." "One?" Regina arched an eyebrow. "Let's not pretend this was an isolated incident. The level of deception required to maintain an affair for 3 months suggests this is very much who you are." Marvin's desperation gave way to anger, his jaw tightening. "And what about yesterday? The skydiving? That was you, wasn't it? Somehow, you did that to us." Regina allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. "I have no idea what you're talking about, but it sounds like you and Samantha had quite the adventure." "We were drugged." Marvin stood now too, his voice rising. "We woke up falling through the sky? Do you have any idea how terrifying that was? We could have died, drugged, and kidnapped." Regina widened her eyes in mock concern. "That sounds like something the police should investigate. Shall we call them? I'm sure they'd be very interested in what you and Samantha were doing at our house while I was supposedly in San Francisco." Marvin's anger deflated, as quickly as it had flared. "You're cruel," he said quietly. "I never thought you could be so cruel. And I never thought you could be so deceitful," Regina countered. "I guess neither of us really knew the other." A heavy silence fell between them. Through the kitchen window, Regina could see their neighbors going about their Saturday morning routines, walking dogs, collecting mail, washing cars. Normal lives untouched by betrayal and revenge. "What happens now?" Marvin finally asked, his voice hollow. Regina had rehearsed this part carefully. "You pack your things and leave. Today. The house is in my name. My inheritance from my father. You have no legal claim to it. And the business?" Their joint marketing consultancy had been built over a decade, with clients across the country. "You can keep your clients. I'll take mine." The company splits down the middle. Regina had already consulted with her attorney about this, ensuring the division would be clean and swift. "Where am I supposed to go?" There was a plaintive note in Marvin's voice that might have moved Regina once. "Not anymore." "That's not my problem," she said coldly. "Perhaps Samantha has room in her apartment. Though, after yesterday's adventure, she might not be so eager to see you." Marvin's expression darkened. "You really did orchestrate that skydiving nightmare. How? And why something so extreme?" Regina leaned forward, fixing him with an unflinching stare. "I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. But if something like that did happen, perhaps it was the universe balancing the scales. Karma, some might call it." The doorbell rang, cutting through the tension. Regina glanced at her watch. "Right on schedule." "That'll be Diana," she said, straightening. "I asked her to come over for moral support. I suggest you start packing while we talk." Marvin remained seated, stunned into immobility. Diana was in on it too, wasn't she? The skydiving company. It's one of her husband's businesses. Regina simply smiled enigmatically and went to answer the door. Diana stood on the porch, elegant as always in designer jeans and a cashmere sweater. Her expression was a perfect blend of concern and determination. "How's it going?" she asked quietly, as Regina ushered her inside. "As expected," Regina replied. "He knows about Samantha, and he suspects about yesterday but can't prove anything." Diana squeezed her friend's hand supportively. "You're doing great. Where is he?" "Kitchen. Probably trying to figure out how to salvage his dignity." They entered the kitchen to find Marvin standing by the window, staring out at the garden Regina had meticulously cultivated over the years. He turned when they entered, his expression hardening at the sight of Diana. "Morning, Marvin," Diana said pleasantly. "Rough day?" He ignored the greeting. "It was your company, wasn't it? The skydiving place. That's how you two pulled it off." Diana raised her eyebrows in perfectly feigned confusion. "Skydiving? Marvin, what are you talking about? Are you feeling all right?" "Don't play dumb," Marvin snapped. "I know William owns that skydiving center. You drugged us and set the whole thing up." Diana exchanged a concerned glance with Regina. "I think the stress might be getting to him," she said sympathetically. "William's investment portfolio is extensive, but I'm quite certain it doesn't include any skydiving operations. That sounds rather niche." Marvin looked from Diana to Regina, doubt creeping into his expression. "But we were there. It happened. Samantha and I—" "Samantha?" Diana interrupted, her tone sharpening. "Who's Samantha, Marvin?" The trap was beautifully executed. Marvin realized too late that he had just confirmed the affair to an outside witness. He stammered, backtracking desperately. "A colleague. Just a colleague." "A colleague who goes skydiving with you?" Diana pressed, relentless. "How progressive of your office." Regina suppressed a smile at her friend's performance. They had practiced this scenario, anticipating every possible direction the confrontation might take. "I think you should start packing," Regina told Marvin, her voice firm but not unkind. "I've called a locksmith to change the locks at 3 o'clock. Marvin's shoulders slumped in defeat. Without another word, he trudged upstairs to their bedroom, soon to be just hers. Diana waited until his footsteps faded before grinning at Regina. "He's completely rattled," she whispered. "Did you see his face when I mentioned the skydiving company?" Regina nodded, feeling a complex mixture of satisfaction and sorrow. "He has no idea what's real anymore. Part of me almost feels sorry for him." "Don't," Diana said firmly. "He made his choices. Now he's living with the consequences." They moved to the living room, speaking in hushed tones while Marvin's movements echoed from upstairs, drawers opening and closing, the thump of suitcases being filled. "What about Samantha?" Diana asked. "Have you heard anything?" Regina shook her head. "Nothing directly, but I deleted a message from her this morning. She wanted to talk to Marvin about what happened yesterday." "She must be just as confused as he is," Diana mused, "waking up thousands of feet in the air with no memory of how she got there." I almost wish I could see her face when Marvin shows up at her door with his suitcases, Regina said with a grim smile. Something tells me adventures are the last thing she'll want with him now. A loud thud from upstairs made both women look up. Marvin appeared at the top of the stairs, struggling with two large suitcases. "Let me help you with those," Diana offered with mock solicitude, ascending to take one of the cases. "I don't need your help," Marvin muttered, but relinquished the larger suitcase nonetheless. Regina watched from the foyer as her soon-to-be ex-husband descended with the last physical remnants of their marriage. 15 years reduced to 2 suitcases and a cardboard box. It seemed both monumental and trivial simultaneously. "I'll need to come back for the rest of my things," Marvin said stiffly, setting down his burden by the front door. "We can arrange that," Regina agreed, "through our attorneys." Marvin flinched at the word. The reality of their separation was sinking in, etched in the hard lines around his mouth. "Regina, please, can we just talk about this? Without her?" He jerked his head toward Diana, who was making a show of examining her manicure. "There's nothing left to say," Regina replied, summoning her remaining strength. She hadn't expected this moment to be so draining. "You betrayed me in the worst possible way, Marvin. You brought another woman into our home, into our bed. I know, and I'm sorry. More sorry than I can express." There was genuine remorse in his voice, but Regina recognized it for what it was: regret at being caught, not at having strayed. "Being sorry isn't enough," she said quietly. "Not for this." Marvin reached for her hand, but Regina stepped back, maintaining the distance between them. "What about all the good years?" he pleaded. "Don't they count for anything?" For a brief moment, memories flashed through Regina's mind. Their wedding day, buying their first home, celebrations, and quiet evenings, and shared dreams. But those images were now tainted, overlaid with the sight of green sandals beside their bed. "They counted," she acknowledged. "That's why this hurts so much." Diana cleared her throat pointedly. "I think it's time, Marvin." He shot her a venomous glance before turning back to Regina. "This isn't over," he said, his tone hardening. "The skydiving thing, that was criminal. Drugging someone, kidnapping them. Again with the skydiving," Diana interjected with an exaggerated sigh. "Regina, I'm concerned about Marvin's mental state. Perhaps he should see someone." "I'm not crazy." Marvin's voice rose in frustration. "It happened. You can't gaslight me about this." Regina stepped forward and opened the front door. Morning sunlight spilled across the threshold, illuminating the path to Marvin's new life. "Goodbye, Marvin," she said simply. He stared at her for a long moment, searching her face for any sign of weakness or forgiveness. Finding none, he grabbed his suitcases with an angry jerk. "You'll regret this," he muttered as he shouldered past her. "Both of you." Regina watched him load his belongings into his car. The vehicle that had once represented their success as a couple now served as his escape from the wreckage of their marriage. As Marvin's car disappeared down the street, Diana put an arm around Regina's shoulders. "Are you okay?" Regina took a deep, steadying breath. "I will be," she said, and was surprised to find she meant it. They closed the door on the sight of Marvin's departure and returned to the kitchen. Diana poured them each a glass of wine, from a new bottle, not the one that had facilitated yesterday's skydiving adventure. "To new beginnings," Diana toasted, raising her glass. Regina clinked her glass against her friend's. "To adventures of our own choosing," she added, with the first genuine smile she'd felt in weeks. Later that evening, after Diana had gone home, Regina sat alone in her garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Her phone buzzed with an incoming text. It was from Diana. "He showed up at Samantha's. Her roommate says there was a huge fight. He's apparently sleeping in his car tonight." Regina set down the phone without replying. She felt no joy in Marvin's continued misfortune, but no pity either. He had made his choices, just as she had made hers. The garden air was cool against her skin, as darkness gradually claimed the sky. Regina looked up at the emerging stars, thinking of yesterday's skydiving revenge. The memory of Marvin and Samantha waking up in free fall would stay with her forever. A reminder of her own capacity for both pain and resilience. Tomorrow, she would begin the process of rebuilding her life, alone, but unbroken. For tonight, the knowledge that justice had been served, in the most literal sense of what goes around comes around, was enough. 6 months passed like the turning of seasons, gradual, yet transformative. Regina stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her downtown office, gazing at the Chicago skyline bathed in late afternoon sunlight. The city sprawled below her, vibrant and full of possibilities, much like her new life. After the dramatic end of her marriage, Regina had thrown herself into rebuilding, not just emotionally, but professionally. The division of their marketing consultancy had been surprisingly straightforward, with most clients choosing sides based on who had managed their accounts originally. What Regina hadn't anticipated was how liberating it would feel to run her own company, making decisions without compromise or consultation. "Ms. Fleming?" Her new assistant, Thomas, appeared at the door. "Your 4 o'clock appointment is here." Regina smiled, smoothing the sleek lines of her tailored suit. "Send them in, please." The potential client was a young tech startup with ambitious plans and an impressive prototype. Throughout the presentation, Regina felt a familiar thrill, the excitement of new challenges, new connections, new growth. When the meeting ended with a signed contract, she allowed herself a moment of pure satisfaction. This was what success felt like. Not the hollow achievement of maintaining appearances in a broken marriage, but the genuine fulfillment of building something authentic. As Regina packed her briefcase to leave for the day, her phone chimed with an incoming message from Diana. "Drinks at 7? The usual place?" Regina typed a quick confirmation. Their Friday evening cocktails had become a cherished ritual over the past months, a time to unwind, celebrate victories, and occasionally reminisce about the skydiving revenge that had marked the beginning of Regina's new chapter. The upscale rooftop bar overlooked Millennium Park, offering breathtaking views of the city, transitioning from day to evening. Diana was already there when Regina arrived, holding court at their favorite corner table. "There she is!" Diana exclaimed, rising to embrace her friend. "The marketing genius who just landed the Vertex account." Regina laughed, setting down her purse. "News travels fast." "William heard it from someone on their board," Diana explained, gesturing to the waiter for another round of drinks. "Apparently, you blew the competition out of the water." "It felt good," Regina admitted, accepting the champagne flute the waiter presented. "Really good." They clinked glasses in celebration, the bubbles catching the warm lighting of the bar. For a moment, they sipped in companionable silence, enjoying the view and the comfortable rhythm of their friendship. "So," Diana said eventually, her tone turning conspiratorial, "I heard something interesting today." Regina raised an eyebrow. "About?" "Marvin." Diana watched Regina's face carefully for any sign of distress. 6 months ago, the mere mention of his name would have sent shards of pain through Regina's heart. Now, she felt only a mild curiosity, like hearing about a character from a book she'd read long ago. "What about him?" she asked, genuinely unbothered. Diana leaned forward. "Apparently, he and Samantha broke up, rather spectacularly, from what I heard. She threw his things off her balcony onto Lakeshore Drive." Regina couldn't help but laugh at the image. "Well, I can't say I'm surprised. Their relationship was built on deception and adventures. Neither makes for a solid foundation." "True," Diana agreed. "But here's the really interesting part. Samantha left him because she caught him with someone else." "You're kidding." Regina shook her head in disbelief. "He didn't learn anything, did he?" "Some people never do." Diana sipped her champagne thoughtfully. "But enough about Marvin. How's the new condo coming along?" Regina's face lit up. After selling the townhouse, too filled with memories both good and painful, she'd purchased a sleek penthouse apartment downtown, closer to her office and emblematic of her fresh start. "The renovations are finally complete. The furniture arrives next week. She pulled out her phone to show Diana photos of the space. All clean lines, panoramic views, and carefully chosen art pieces that reflected her personal taste, not compromises made with a partner. "It's stunning," Diana declared. "We need to have a housewarming party. Something small but fabulous." Siku. As they discussed party plans, Regina found herself reflecting on the distance she'd traveled in 6 months. Not just the physical move from suburban townhouse to urban penthouse, but the emotional journey from betrayed wife to confident, independent woman. "Earth to Regina!" Diana waved a hand before her face. "Where did you go just now?" Regina smiled apologetically. "Sorry, I was just thinking about everything that's changed. Sometimes I can hardly believe it's only been 6 months." "You've done amazingly well," Diana said, her voice softening with genuine admiration. "Many people would have fallen apart after what you went through." "I had moments," Regina admitted. "Those first few weeks after Marvin left, there were days I could barely get out of bed." "But you did," Diana reminded her. "And look at you now." The conversation shifted to lighter topics. An exhibition Diana wanted to see, a new restaurant they should try, William's latest business venture. As the evening progressed and the city lights below them grew more brilliant against the darkening sky, Regina felt a profound sense of contentment wash over her. Later, as they were preparing to leave, Diana asked the question Regina had been expecting for months. "Do you ever regret it? The skydiving thing?" Regina considered this carefully. "No," she said finally. "I don't. It was extreme, yes, maybe even a little crazy. But, in a strange way, it helped me reclaim my power when I felt most powerless." Diana nodded in understanding. "It certainly gave them a story they'll never forget, even if they can't tell anyone without sounding completely insane." They shared a laugh as they gathered their belongings. Outside the bar, as they waited for the valet to bring their cars, Diana touched Regina's arm gently. "You know, I've been meaning to tell you something," she said, her expression growing serious. "When everything first happened with Marvin, I was so focused on helping you get revenge that I didn't say what I should have, that none of it was your fault. He didn't cheat because you were lacking in any way. He cheated because of his own weaknesses, his own failures." Regina felt unexpected tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "Thank you for saying that," she whispered. "There were times I wondered—" "Don't," Diana interrupted firmly. "Just don't. You are extraordinary, Regina Fleming, and anyone who couldn't see that doesn't deserve you." They embraced tightly, the bond between them strengthened by shared secrets and unwavering support through the darkest of times. The valet arrived with Regina's car first. As she slid into the driver's seat, Diana leaned down to the window. "Call me tomorrow about those housewarming party plans." "Will do," Regina promised with a smile. The drive to her temporary apartment, where she'd live until the furniture arrived at the new penthouse, took Regina along the lakefront. The water gleamed like black silk under the moonlight, rippling with possibilities. She rolled down the window, letting the cool night air rush over her face, savoring the sensation of freedom. At a stoplight, Regina glanced at the car beside her, a silver Mercedes similar to Marvin's. The driver was a middle-aged man talking intensely on his phone, gesturing with one hand while the other clutched the steering wheel. For a moment, Regina was struck by how much he resembled Marvin in profile. The same sharp jawline, the same intense focus. Once, such a sighting would have sent her spiraling into painful memories. Tonight, she merely noted the resemblance with detached interest before the light changed, and she accelerated away. The following weekend, Regina stood in her new penthouse, directing the placement of furniture and unpacking boxes of carefully selected items from her former life. She had kept only what truly mattered to her: family photographs, art she had personally chosen, books that had shaped her thinking. Everything that reminded her of Marvin had been sold, donated, or discarded. As she unpacked a box labeled "Office," Regina came across a small, forgotten item, a framed photograph of her and Marvin on their 10th anniversary trip to Greece. They stood on a whitewashed balcony overlooking the Mediterranean, smiling into the camera with genuine happiness. Regina studied the image, searching her heart for the pain that had been her constant companion in the early days after discovering his betrayal. To her surprise, she felt only a gentle melancholy, an acknowledgement of what had been lost, but without the searing anguish that had once accompanied such memories. She placed the photograph back in the box, not to keep, not to display, but to remind herself later of this moment, the moment she realized she had truly moved on. The housewarming party the following Friday evening was everything Regina had hoped for, intimate yet lively, filled with friends who had supported her through the difficult transition and new acquaintances who knew her only as she was now, successful, independent, and content in her own skin. Diana arrived fashionably late, bearing an extravagant orchid arrangement and a bottle of vintage champagne. "Only the best for new beginnings," she declared, kissing Regina on both cheeks. As the evening progressed, Regina found herself drawn into conversation with one of Diana's friends, a distinguished architect named James, who spoke passionately about sustainable design and asked thoughtful questions about her marketing work. There was a spark of interest in his eyes that Regina might have missed 6 months ago, but now recognized with a flutter of anticipation. When James asked if she might be interested in continuing their conversation over dinner sometime, Regina surprised herself by saying yes, without hesitation or guilt. Later, as the party wound down and only Diana remained, helping to clear away glasses and plates, Regina mentioned the dinner invitation casually. "James seems nice," she said, loading the dishwasher. Diana's smile was knowing but free of smugness. "He is. Very nice. Also very single, and very impressed by you." Regina felt a blush warm her cheeks. "It's just dinner." "Of course," Diana agreed, too quickly. They finished cleaning in companionable silence. As Diana prepared to leave, she paused at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "Quite a view," she remarked. "You can see everything from up here." Regina joined her friend at the window. The Chicago skyline stretched before them, a glittering tapestry of lights against the night sky. Somewhere in that vast expanse were the remnants of her old life, the townhouse with new owners, the office where Marvin now ran his half of their former business, perhaps even Samantha's apartment, where their affair had ultimately combusted. But from this height, those details were indistinguishable, just tiny points in a magnificent, sprawling landscape of possibility. "Yes," Regina agreed softly. "You really can." Diana squeezed her hand. "You know what I was thinking about the other day? That moment when Marvin and Samantha woke up falling through the sky? Can you imagine the absolute shock?" Regina laughed, the sound bright and genuine. "I still wish we had a recording of their faces." "The ultimate wake-up call," Diana quipped. "In more ways than one," Regina added. "For all of us, really." After Diana left, Regina returned to the window alone. She pressed her palm against the cool glass, feeling the subtle vibration of the city below. Alive, dynamic, constantly reinventing itself, just as she had done. The free fall of discovering Marvin's betrayal had been terrifying. For a time, Regina had felt as though her entire life was plummeting uncontrollably toward disaster. But somewhere during that descent, she had found her parachute, her inner strength, her resilience, her capacity to not just survive, but thrive in the aftermath of devastation. Unlike Marvin and Samantha, who had awakened to find themselves plunging through the sky with no warning and no preparation, Regina had learned to embrace the fall, to spread her arms wide and feel the rushing air not as a threat, but as the breath of new life entering her lungs. The skydiving revenge had been perfect in its poetic justice, forcing those who sought adventure through deception to experience the ultimate adrenaline rush, the ultimate loss of control. But the true victory hadn't been watching them fall. It had been discovering that she could fly. Regina turned away from the window and surveyed her new home. Sleek, elegant, entirely hers. Tomorrow would bring new clients, new challenges, perhaps even the beginning of a new relationship. But tonight, in this moment, she was complete in herself. She moved through the penthouse, turning off lights as she went, leaving only the soft glow of the city illuminating her path to the bedroom. As she prepared for sleep, Regina caught her reflection in the mirror, the same chestnut hair, the same determined eyes, but with a new serenity in her expression, a confidence that radiated from within. "Not bad, Fleming," she whispered to her reflection. "Not bad at all." That night, Regina slept deeply and dreamlessly in her new home, high above the city where her life had shattered and reformed. Outside her windows, stars wheeled slowly across the sky, distant, brilliant reminders that sometimes the greatest adventures begin not with a betrayal or a revenge, but with the simple, courageous act of letting go. And when Regina woke the next morning to sunlight streaming through her bedroom windows, she felt something she hadn't expected when this journey began. Not just the absence of pain, but the presence of joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy at the prospect of the day ahead, the life ahead. She had fallen, yes, but she had also learned to soar. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? And if your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company and for the coffee, and I'll see you in the next story.